Hi and welcome back to my vlog. So today I want to talk to you about why it's not what happens to us that makes us upset or anxious or worried or feel the way that we feel. It's our reaction to what happens. Now, I've got pink cheeks that you can see. I've been running this morning and that's part of what I want to talk to you about today. So I've got a really good example from the weekend that's just gone. So I went and did a show jumping class with my lovely chestnut sports horse Kiki. We have show jumped up to 1.15 m, but we hadn't done a show jumping class for a couple of years, a combination of COVID, moving to the UK and being focused on eventing. So the class that we entered was 95 centimetres, which is actually the height that I started jumping her at when I got her 4 years ago. So 95 centimetres is massively within our comfort zone, and for Kiki would be a little bit on the small side. Now, for those of you that haven't followed me for ages, my background is I used to be seriously nervous at doing any height of show jumping competition, and it was successfully tackling and banishing my own riding nerves and all of the stories that went with that led me into the wonderful world of mindset and led me to want to do what I do as a mindset transformation coach as a business, because the power of the mind is incredible. Now, we have been back in the UK for about 6 to 7 weeks, and in the last few weeks I've done a dressage competition. Kiki and I did a novice dressage test, we did a hunter trial, and then we've done this show jumping class. Now, of all of the disciplines, show jumping is the one that we have done the most of. We had 2.5 full seasons of going out a few times a month to stay away shows, sort of 3 or 4 days. So if I was to kind of plot it on a graph, the show jumping would be massively at the top, the dressage would be here, and the eventing would be somewhere in the middle. So we've done far, far, far more show jumping than anything else. When I went to the dressage competition, I wasn't nervous at all. Kiki and I are kind of on a level in our dressage experience and abilities, and yeah, it was good. It was nice to get back out there. When I went to the hunter trial, I actually was surprisingly not nervous. There was a couple of fences that I thought, but I knew that for Kiki to have the confidence, I would need to ride positively, and I also knew I would really need to listen to her and where she was at in her energy levels, because the cross-country tracks in the UK are longer and have more jumping efforts than those in France. So I knew that we wouldn't go as fast and tackle it in the same way. So I just listened to her on that. But similarly, there were no nerves for either of those competitions. Then I turned up at the show jumping competition on Sunday and I felt nervous. And it was really interesting. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what an old pre-mindset work version of me would have done, and then I'm going to tell you what I actually did and why that matters and the difference that it made. So when I used to be a very nervous rider, I would feel the nerves would start like weeks before, but when I did feel them at a competition, I would be like, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous, oh God, maybe I shouldn't be here. And a story happened in my mind, which was, maybe I'm nervous because something bad is going to happen, or maybe I'm nervous because I shouldn't be here. This is too big a level for me. I'm not up to competition. All of these stories just kept coming up. And if you know anything about mindset, what is happening in our mind becomes our reality. If you think something for long enough, you believe it. But the key thing, and you might have heard me say this before, thoughts aren't facts. In fact, what we think is often a bit of a crappy indication of reality. It's our mind, the way that it's wired with the negativity bias naturally, wants to keep us safe. Now, I use the word safe in quotes. It's kind of a strange one because obviously we all know horse riding can have its risks. Safe in your mind's view of the world is keeping you where you are. So if you've always jumped 70 or 80 centimetres and that's the level that your brain believes you're happy and safe at, if you push that to 85 or 90 or anything, it starts to set off alarm bells. And that's why so many people can do so well at one level, but then they push up and they just don't believe they can do it because their mind believes the limit is the level above, and that's where the stories come. So all of those stories that my mind was telling me and I was listening to back in the day before I did the mindset work was just really unhelpful. They were just continuing to make me feel like I shouldn't compete. I wasn't good enough for it. And another story, if I was meant to compete, it wouldn't be so hard. I wouldn't feel so nervous, all of those things. None of those things were true. But let me tell you, in the moment, they felt so true. So that's what the old version of me would have done. Here's what I actually did, knowing what I know now about the brain and mindset work and all those things. I felt the nerves come on and I went, interesting, I feel nervous. And my husband was there with me and I said to him, I'm surprised I actually feel a bit nervous. And that was the extent of acknowledging the nerves. I didn't pretend that I wasn't nervous. I didn't go, oh, it's fine, I'm okay, I don't get nervous, and bullshit myself. I also didn't go, oh my God, why do I feel nervous? That's so weird. I didn't allow the stories to get in there. I could have done if I wasn't so aware of how the mind works. Gone, does that mean we're not up to this level anymore? Does that mean we're not show jumpers these days? Any of those things. I literally observed the feeling and didn't judge it. The judging is when you go, but I shouldn't feel nervous. I've done this all the time before. This is small for us. All of those things that actually are true, they don't help in that moment. Just observe, notice, oh, I feel nervous. Okay, what next? Tack up my horse, walk the course, whatever it is. That is really key. Observe what's happening, notice what's happening, and then carry on. Because it's very similar with anxiety. When you feel anxiety coming, if you resist that anxiety, it will hang around for far longer than if you notice it and allow it to be there. Human nature is, when there's a feeling or a thought that we don't like, is to try and either ignore it or banish it, and it doesn't work. It keeps it there for longer. So notice that it's there and continue with whatever you're doing. The next thing that I noticed was, when I was on and in the warm-up, I didn't feel nervous. I wanted to ride a certain way. I wanted to make sure that Kiki was listening to me all the way round, that we were attacking the fences. There were certain stride patterns that I wanted to make sure that I got. I wanted to make sure that we were going around corners in the correct bend, because Kiki can get a bit excited and so can I, and then we kind of just forget. And because she's got the scope, we can kind of get away with motorbiking around the corner, and that's not where I want to be. So we'd had a lesson on the Friday, the competition was on the Sunday, and I wanted to put the things we'd worked on in the lesson into practice. So I didn't feel nervous once I was in the saddle. I genuinely do believe that had I gone down the, why do I feel nervous? Oh my God, what does that mean route? I would have exacerbated the nerves and they would have affected me in the warm-up and in the ring. So what then happened was, we went into the ring, we had a super time, because 95 is not massively motivating for Kiki. She was a bit lazy, didn't pick her back legs up on one fence, and we had it down. However, I was able to continue with the round, pushed on. We actually sped up a little bit in the second half because it was a timed class and we were really fast. We came sixth overall, and I think we would have come second if we hadn't have had the pole down. It wasn't really about the placings, it was about getting back out there and having fun, and we both very much did that. Finished with smiles on our faces, and it was a really nice afternoon. Came home, sorted her out and did all the normal things. Later on in the evening, as our minds have a tendency to try and piece things together, what I recognised was the reason for the nerves. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to find the reason, but obviously the way that I operate, knowing what I know about the mind, is interesting to me to see why the nerves were there historically, why the nerves were there then when they'd been very bad historically, and what that meant. Notice though, it was a number of hours later. I wasn't picking it up in the moment, and I also wasn't going, oh my God, why did I feel nervous? It just came to me from my subconscious mind, because that's the way that the mind works. Because Kiki is an experienced show jumper, and I bought her as an experienced show jumper 4 years ago, I used to have an identity, a limiting belief that I wasn't a good show jumper, and that she was not too good for me, but she was better than me. Now, she has all of that ability, and I think there was a small narrative because it's been a long time since we've show jumped, that I didn't want to let her down. So I therefore was unintentionally putting pressure on myself to make sure that I stepped up to the level, because I knew that she could do it with her eyes closed. Now, the only way I could let Kiki down in any way, shape or form is if I didn't take the best care of her that I possibly could in every moment. Kiki gets the best of everything, as do all of my horses. And I still occasionally, subconsciously, have those, oh, am I good enough for her moments? The key thing though, not to get embroiled in the story, not to allow the fact that there is the presence of a nerve, a doubt, some anxiety to mean something huge. Because when you just observe thoughts and feelings, and particularly feelings, they have a tendency just to roll on through and then something else will come. It's when we get too focused on, why do I feel that way? What does that mean? Note that we don't do that when we feel happy, when we feel full of joy, when we feel excited. Oh, why do I feel excited? Because we know all of those things. It's just the brain with the negativity bias has the desire to kind of overanalyze everything. The challenge though is you're overanalyzing everything from a position of feeling not great. So what you focus on by virtue will be not great, and what you will create is a spiral of something that's not great. So really recognize there's nerves, okay, there's anxiety, okay, allow them to be. They will much more quickly pass through. Now back to why my cheeks are pink. Having been for a run this morning, on what day is it today? Thursday. On Tuesday, we had a day trip out where we were in the car for most of the day. I was still did my feeding the horses in the morning and did my yard jobs in the afternoon, but I spent a lot of the day in the car, which meant I hadn't moved my body. Now, I would normally be very active. I would ride most days. I do my yard jobs. I walk the dogs, and we still did walk the dogs, but it was kind of shorter. Yesterday, so the day after I'd been in the car all day, I could feel that my energy was a bit low, and I noticed that my response to things was veering more towards the negative. Because of the work that I do, I'm very aware when things are kind of out of the ordinary, and I could feel sort of in a bit of a funk. Not at all extreme. If you'd seen me or spoken to me, you wouldn't have known anything, but I could feel it. And so as I went to bed yesterday evening, we actually went for a really nice walk up onto a very high hill close to here, so blowing the cobwebs away, walking one of the dogs, which was great. And I still felt a little bit of a funk in the evening. So I decided before I went to bed this morning I would go for a run. For me, my energy is everything. I have a lot to do in a day, I've got a lot that I want to achieve, and it's really important to me that my energy is where I need it to be. I can influence my energy by how much I move my body. Now, again, an old version of me would have been a little bit like, oh, I don't feel great. Okay, well, maybe I'll do something that is kind of comforting. And again, I use that in quotes. When you know yourself and when you recognize what makes you feel energized and what doesn't, you know that your mind can trick you. So very often, if you feel a bit in a funk, it can be tempting to say, I'll have a glass of wine, or I'll go and have a sleep on the sofa, or I'll sit down with a packet of crisps or whatever. And I'm not saying don't ever do any of those things, but what I am saying is the mind has a tendency to trick us into something that actually is going to exacerbate how we're feeling. Moving our bodies is huge. It's one of the biggest things that we can do to make a difference to our energy. Similarly, it's also important to make sure we rest. But when you get to know yourself and you know what you need, you can make the judgment. I went running this morning for 20 minutes. I ran, or 19 and a bit, 3 kilometres. It was just what I needed, got my blood pumping, got my heart going, and just, yeah, I now feel wholly energetic. The fact that I'm recording this video before 9 o'clock, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have gone for a run. So just really recognise the power that you have. It's really easy to feel like we are just victim of what happens around us, but actually we get to choose our energy in every moment. And if there is one takeaway, in fact 2 takeaways, the 2 takeaways from this vlog are, when you notice when something's happening that's a thought or a feeling, observe it and don't judge or analyze it. Don't just allow it to be. Don't make any story about it. Don't worry why it's there. Just notice it and then carry on with your day. And the second thing, and this is really important because this is the route to emotional freedom, no, it's not what happens to us that impacts how we feel, good, bad, happy, sad. It's our reaction to what happens to us. And we can control that reaction when we know how. So I hope that's been helpful. If you would like to know more, you can get in touch. If you're interested in anything mindset and you think that you would like some help, just drop me an email and we can have a chat. My email address is nikki@beyourbestjet.co.uk. Have a great day, everybody.